Hello, hello. I hope you all are well. It's nice to be with you. We're here to talk with another amazing solution provider. As you all know, our slogan is founded in science, refined by practice, constantly optimized by our network of experts. And the solution providers, the assessors, the buildings, these are the experts, and they are informing the certification, they're informing the SBC framework, and we're constantly evolving together. And today is really exciting because we are being joined by Boy Navist from Spacewell to talk about Spacewell solution certification. And Spacewell is an incredible company. It's a massive technology capability in the smart building space. They do a lot, and they do based on our framework and based on the solution certification that Spacewell went through, you can see that they touch all aspects of what we're certifying. Almost all aspects. So we're going to dive into that today with Boy, and I'm really, really excited to be joined by Spacewell and to be talking about it. Just to give you all some context of what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to go step by step through the SBC framework and look at the Spacewell solution against the SBC framework and how it delivers for that. So building usage is exactly what it says. It's all about how the asset is being utilized and how can we use technology to inform and to improve how we utilize the asset and make the way in which we deliver value better. Building performance is all about how the asset actually performs, thinking about energy, water, all of the different utilities that you might be thinking about, but how is the asset actually delivering against the promise that it had? Building environment is about the indoor environment, thinking about health and well-being, air quality, light, sound. What are all of the different aspects within the environment that impact human performance, health, and well-being, and how can we use technology to inform that? Safety and security is both physical and digital. How are we keeping people physically safe in assets? Thinking about disaster mitigation, notifications when things go wrong, fire safety, fire security, but also digital. So how are we keeping the asset cyber secure and making sure that the data is being protected, making sure that things are not vulnerable for attack, these types of things. So we want to talk to Spacewell about how they do that. User behavior and collaboration is how are people interacting with the building itself, controlling it, finding what they need, booking what they need, but also how are they interacting with each other? How do we build community within a building? How do we make sure that we use technology to foster that? So the solution certification from us really is more than a stamp, right? Like, yes, it's nice to be accredited. It's nice to know that you're focusing and working on the same thing. But what we're seeing is that the solution for certification really helps us know what the solution is capable of, and therefore helps us tell stories, helps us make sure that the market understands it better, have meaningful interviews like I hope the one will be today. And we also hear that the solution certification supports innovation. It helps you think about how your solution delivers against the framework, but what are the things that it could do moving forward? I think actually a lot of solutions are constantly surprised at new value propositions and new things that their solution is capable of. It also helps us with matchmaking to buildings. When we certify buildings, we identify opportunities, gaps, challenges that they may have, and then they want to find solutions and parties and support to fill those gaps. And that sales process, that buying process of solutions can be really, really challenging. So how do we cut through the noise and help these buildings make those decisions more easily? And then finally, we support matchmaking with partners, finding partners, and we talk about pure integrations and conflicted integrations in the sense where if we can help parties find each other where it's complete complementary to each other, that really does wonders. When a building buys 3 or 4 solutions and then says, hey, can you guys speak to each other? Can you guys integrate? That's a much more challenging thing than if we can do that earlier and more effective before going into the building. So we're really working as a community. The Smart Building Collective is looking at how can we make those connections in a meaningful way to deliver holistic smart solutions. So if you are interested, get in touch. We'd be happy to talk to you guys more about solution certification, also building certification. But for now, I'm excited to be joined by Boy, and I'm going to bring him onto stage now, and we're going to kick off this workshop, this discussion. I'm going to save that. There we are.
Hi.
Boy.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm good. It's busy. There's a lot going on. We have some really exciting things coming. I'm not going to go into those now, but yeah, it's amazing. It's wonderful. Let's start with introduction. Let's first of all, who's Boy Navist? What is your role, and who is Spacewell? What are you guys up to?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me, first of all. Well, like you said, my name is Boy Navist. I've been working for Spacewell for the past 8 years. And my role within the company is currently I'm the manager of global sales enablement and sales operations. And that means that I have all the teams within my portfolio that make sure that sales has the correct toolkit to do their job, and that everything at the back end administratively is done correctly once they have engaged with a prospect, made a sale, an upscale, an upgrade, an upsell, etc. So basically, I make sure I'm watering the plant, the sales plant, every single day, making sure that they can do their job correctly.
And I heard you guys did a good job last year. I saw a post, I think, a few days ago that you guys smashed your targets. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. Yeah. It's of course you don't always know for sure if you are going to be successful every single year. But we noticed that what we are doing in the market is resonating, so that's nice always, of course. And we are also operating in a very broad. There's not a single market segment where we operate it, so it's very broad for us, and that makes it, even if some market segments are trailing behind, we certainly have some market segments that are overperforming. So spreading out your portfolio always makes sure that you can do a good job.
And you've been with Spacewell for 8 years, but how old is Spacewell?
Yeah, a good question.
Who is Spacewell?
Spacewell is not 8 years old. We are currently around 4 years old, and Spacewell is a company that is being made up of 4 different companies, basically. And I started with one of those companies, Exerion is the one that I started with 8 years ago. And basically what happened is that the Nemetschek Group, of which we are a subsidiary, is a German publicly traded software company which operates with software in the entire building life cycle. And they had a lot of software companies within their portfolio for design, in the design segment of buildings, and also in the construct segment of buildings. But they didn't really have companies within the manage and operate segment. And once you look at where the most costs are within a building, then it's, of course, after it's been built. And they wanted to acquire new software companies to make sure that they also had representation in that specific segment. So basically they could have the entire building life cycle software-wise. And they started around 5 years ago, with acquiring the first of those 4 companies, which what I talked about, which was MCS. After that, Axerion and Oprognos came into view. And at the end of 2020 or 2019, beginning of 2020, Dexma was added also. And we are currently busy in the past 4 years making sure that all those 4 companies are going to work in one structure, Spacewell.
And has that been easy to do, or
no?
How's it going?
No, absolutely not. No, that's not easy. No. Based on a couple of things. Of course, it's we are an international company, so we have locations in India, Sweden, Spain, the Netherlands, Belgium, France. So it's a lot of different cultures. First of all, making that work together is a challenge in itself, but also different company cultures as well, different ways of working. Also different software solutions, so operating in different segments and making sure that that's one harmonized whole is, of course, very difficult. And were we successful? I would say so. Was it easy? No. And are we done? Absolutely not. Then the next couple of years are also going to be for us finalizing that journey and making sure that we have one company message to the market. But we are on our way, and it's going well after some struggles. But I think that we are doing the correct things currently.
Yeah, and my previous employer, they became massive in the same way. They acquired a lot of companies and then they integrate them. And from a change management perspective, of course, keeping it positive and really working with people to make sure they come that way. And then,
Sure.
Time heals a lot, right? So
yes.
At a certain point, you are just Spacewell, and
yes,
that it feels that way. So I think you guys, from the outside, that you've aligned all of the branding, you've aligned all the names, these types of things. That's the outside, and then it really starts to come together as one.
I hope so. But I think you're right. Making time heals all wounds, they say, and I think that that's the case. And making sure that everybody feels at home in that new structure, but also being honest when things are not going well. And some people, need a little bit more time, and that's fine. That's not a problem. I see that our company is very flexible and very resilient to make sure that in the end everybody finds a home within Spacewell, and that's, I think, one of the compliments that I can give to the company and also all these sub companies that started that journey, as a whole.
So these technologies, right? I'm not quite sure about what each one of them did. I think they were occupancy management. There's one on energy optimization. Pretty much everything about the SVC framework.
Yes.
The tech suite of Spacewell covers that. Are those technologies all very well integrated now, or is it still seen as a few different products from each other?
I think that we are in the process and on our way to make that a completely integrated solution, but we are currently not there yet. So once you look at specific parts of our offering, then you will find solutions that are integrated. But you can also find combinations that are not integrated yet. And having a large portfolio makes it difficult to do that all at once, of course. So we are picking and choosing the ones that we think are the most important for now, and making sort of a structure in which we are going to do the other ones later on. And that's, of course, our roadmap for the foreseeable future, making sure that in the end, that's the goal, having one large integrated software platform. But we're not there yet.
Yeah, and what's interesting about it is you make those steps by doing, right? Because
Yes.
when you get a customer who says, I want this, and this all integrated, well, then you say, of course, we're going to do that, and let's figure out how we're going to do it.
Sure.
And so you make progress by doing.
Yes. Yes, of course, we are informed by what the market wants, absolutely, but we also have, of course, our own view on the market as well, and where certain things are going. And those two together make sure that you have your phasing of your integration, and that's and maybe a third one as well. And that's, of course, what your employees find within your customer environments as well. That all together makes the entire journey.
Yeah, I'm excited to jump into the framework and hear what you guys what you're cooking. But to start with, what's your geography? Where are you guys selling? Are you guys selling everywhere? Are you guys selling?
Yes, we are basically selling worldwide. When we look at our client portfolio, it's spread out across the globe. When we look at where the largest group of customers is, that's in Europe and in the United States. Those two continents are just also from historical point of view, that's where we started, and that's where we are operating a lot. But we have customers in the APAC region. We have customers in Africa. We have customers in basically, if you ask me a country, then probably we have somebody there. But of course, we also have countries where we don't operate at all at the moment. And we have, of course, countries where we think that there's a large growth opportunity as well for us. So we basically try to see where the business takes us, but also have a good strategy of where we think the opportunities lie.
Wow, that's an incredible story in such a short amount of time that you guys are everywhere.
Yeah,
okay.
That's of course, yes, you're correct.
Yeah,
I like it as well.
Yeah, and software, hardware, both?
We are, that's a very good question. We are a software company first, and we design, implement, and sell our own developed software. And we always say we are hardware agnostic, and we are. We don't create our own hardware, and we are not planning to. That's a decision that we made in the entire organization. We select hardware vendors that align most with our solutions. But even then, if a customer already has hardware, we are completely open to integrating with that hardware. So if the customer needs something, then we have hardware vendors that we work with, and we have certified for our solutions. If the customer has it on its own, fine with us.
Wow, very cool. All right, let's dive into the framework. So the
Sure.
first one is building usage, right? Thinking
Yes.
about occupancy management, thinking about how people are actually using the asset. How does Spacewell's solutions services help that process of
Yes.
maximizing the usage of an asset?
Yeah, well, first of all, we think that data is the key. That's first of all, that's what we breathe. We want data to make informed decisions. So how do you get that data? And that's something that we think about a lot. How do you get structured, good informed data? And for building usage, that's a combination of good software, making data that is maybe not so easy to interpret by the end user, and making sure that the data flows into your system. And that can be very broad. It can, of course, be sensors. It can be a building management system. And we have multiple examples of combinations of both, for example. Sending data to a platform, a open market standard platform, where you can basically filter the data, report on the data, have dashboards on that data, and make informed decisions. And that's the basis of what we create.
That analysis tool of that data.
Yes, we call that in our product portfolio workplace analytics. And that's basically a group of dashboards and filter possibilities on your data based on, for example, a floor plan or multiple floor plans, if you have multiple floors or multiple buildings, and basically extracting the data from those sensors or building management systems and showing that easily in a smart way to understand it quickly, and also letting the system do the job for you. So the system can also tell you certain things about where you can save space or money based on your usage of your current buildings.
And is that just hard data of how people are moving around, or do you also capture like perception data? Do you capture happiness or sadness of using a space?
Yes.
Like, it's one thing to say, okay, this space is used often, but are people happy in that space? How do you guys deal with that?
Yeah, that's also a good question. We have certain examples of very easy to click. Am I happy or not happy? Even if it's just a smiley, I click a smiley that's laughing or crying. Based on that, we know if somebody's happy or not. Ticketing comes into place also in there. People can make tickets based on what they find in the room or if they are not happy about something. But I think personally, the nicest one is the correlation between, and that's also in the framework, by the way. And I'm jumping very quickly. I will jump back even quicker. But correlating environmental data to usage data,
Yeah.
that can have very, very good insights into if people are happy, yes or no. So
Yeah.
if a room is cold, then and that room is probably not being booked a lot. So, and we can see that in the data. So we can see if, oh, that room is not being occupied a lot. Why is that? Okay, let's check the environmental data there. And then we can see,
Temperatures too cold.
temperature's too low. Or maybe temperature's way too high, or CO2 levels are rising there. So everybody's get a headache when they sit in that room for too long. And correlating that data can give very good insights into the usage of your building.
And then you said workplace management. Is that the only asset class that you're working on, or do you do this for other asset classes as well?
In the workplace, we see the most growth at the moment. So if you look at that specific part of our solution, then yes, it's mostly being used in the workplace. But then again, we also get a lot of requests from schools, universities, for example. Sort of a workplace, but when you look at the details, it's a little bit different than a workplace. Our other solutions work mostly in other segments as well. But we see specifically for those analytics types of cases that's usually workplaces.
And can you say something about, single tenant, one company running a building versus co-working, lots of individuals and small companies and startups?
Both.
But what are you seeing as far as the uptake of this technology? Is the co-working doing it more, or is it both?
It's both, actually. When you look at single occupiers of a building, for example, a large company that has multiple locations and just wants to see what the usage of their buildings is, we see that, of course, sure. That's a large percentage of the companies that knock on our door. However, we also see rental companies that have multi-work buildings with multiple different companies in there, also to mix and match their rental portfolio, making sure that they have the correct environmental steps taken in a building, making sure that their buildings are attractive for renters as well. So it's both, actually, and it's also very, very funny to see that they think that their problems are different, but when you look at the data, their problems are basically the same.
Okay.
It's always making sure that we have a good optimization of our space, making sure that the end user of the building is happy and working in conditions that make them productive. Basically, in the end product, they want the same. Of course, the means to get there is different, and their business goals are probably different, but they want the same for their end users.
Really nice. One of the things that we have in the smart building certification when we certify buildings is a module called maturity of smart, right? There's one thing to have like an air quality sensor in your room to see that the CO2 level is high or low, to give people a good feeling or an awareness that something needs to change. But what you're seeing is that there are buildings that are going way beyond that now, right? Where
Sure.
the CO2 sensor drives the BMS system, changes the energy consumption, changes the airflow, but even, is connected to your reservation system that sends an invoice when you use a room, right? So
Yes.
the maturity level is completely different. So when we talk about building usage and what you guys are seeing, what kind of new business models are you seeing? What are the most kind of the ones where have been the most eye-opening for you, I guess,
Yeah.
in your experience?
that's a good question. I see basically the things that you're saying, letting the system not only do the gathering of the data, but when they see certain, we call that brain rules, based on a certain threshold level or based on a certain implementation you made in the system, you can also send data out. And that's where Pandora's box opens, because that's when you can basically, the opportunities are endless there. And we see cases already where indeed, like you said, certain buildings are so smart that they want that data to actually send that data to other systems so that they can, for example, open or close the blinds, open or close the windows, steer the ventilation systems, the HVAC systems, etc. Do we see that a lot currently? I have to be honest, no. And that's because when you look at the entire building portfolio of a country or or let's say the world even, a lot of new buildings are being built that are smart, of course, but the largest percentage of buildings that are currently operating are not smart. And that's where we also think that we can contribute a lot, not necessarily creating the smartest, absolutely craziest example you can think of, but even going from 0 to, let's say, 50% of what you're saying is such an extra for that company and such a saving on the long term for that company that we are also very happy to be able to service those buildings as well.
Nice. And you called them brain rules?
Brain rules, yes.
Brain rules.
That's
really
something that we're working on a lot, and that's something that you will see from us in the future a lot. Making sure that the system decides what's going on, having some input, system using those brain rules, figuring out, using some form of machine learning and AI, and sending triggers out to other systems. So, for example, steering the blinds or opening windows or sending out pings to an HVAC system, for example.
And I think that's a perfect segue to the next module, which is, building performance.
Yes.
Thinking about your energy consumption, thinking about the promises the building made versus how it's actually delivering promises. How does the Spacewell tech suite support that? And I think you're already hinting to it in these brain rules.
Yes.
How should we see that?
Yeah. When I go back to one of the companies that we acquired at the end of 2019, a company called Dexma, and they are one of the front runners in the world on energy management systems. And that's something that we see a very large future in, not only because we have our environmental impact in the world and we want to make sure that everything is sustainable, etc., but also because there's a lot of money involved in that specific target segment as well for a lot of our customers. And basically what Dexma does is we call it energy. Of course, it's the easiest name you can give it. So we have workplace on the one hand and energy on the other hand. And what energy does is using 3 very simple ways of going in the environment of a building and seeing what's happening. And that is detect what's going on at this moment. What are we using? Do we have solar panels? Do we have a power plant somewhere? Do we use a lot of energy on the 2nd floor or the 3rd floor, for example? Analyze what can we do better and optimize how to do it better. And in that, with those 3, actually, well, they sound simple. They're sometimes simple, sometimes they're not. There we can really make an impact on the energy usage of a building. And we think that that's future-wise one of the largest grow markets for that part of our solution. Yes.
Nice. And practically speaking, so I'm a company that says, hey, that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
How big of a project is that? Is that difficult to do? What are you guys measuring? How should I see that?
Yeah, it's not as difficult as it may seem. And even if a company doesn't have any smart energy meters or things like that, then we can help companies there. And basically we do it in 2 ways. If a company doesn't have anything smart yet in their building and they want to measure their energy output and have recommendations based on that output, then we have very simple import connectors and import sheets to make sure that they can enter their energy information in there. We process that into the system and recommendations roll out. Basically, that's how it works. That's nice in a way because, of course, if you don't have anything smart, you can even start with the system. So that's nice. It's not available in every part of the world yet, but we are rolling it out worldwide as we speak. And hopefully in the next months and at the end of the year, we have it rolled out in a very large percentage of the world.
Is that because it's a hardware thing that?
Yeah, not only that, but also the ways in which energy is measured is not the same in every part of the world, and also how you calculate your gains, and also your recommendations are different in different parts of the world. So tweaking that and making sure that in every single country that is a nice recommendation, that makes it difficult to do it at once, and we are doing it in steps.
Yeah, say more about that, because what we see from a smart, in general discussion, everybody in the world, we believe we're speaking the same language when it's smart building, but actually every geography has different culture, different structure, different systems, different measurement, different certifications, different everything. That makes that really, really kind of unique per geography. So how do you guys see that, and how do you deal with it?
Yeah, it's difficult in a way, but it's also a nice challenge to make sure that it works in every single continent and every single country. However, we always have the approach that we need to be careful and very how do I say that? We have to be careful in how we approach that. We don't want to go super fast. You have to make sure that what you do in a certain country resonates with regulations, certifications, making sure that you know the technology, the market, and that when you have a recommendation that it makes sense. Let's say if you, for example, would roll this solution out in the north of Finland, and your recommendation is you should get solar panels. Yeah, that's cool, but that only works only half of the year, and then it doesn't work. So making sure that your recommendations are correct is maybe even, that's the output to the customer. That's where they make their decisions. So making sure that's correct, we don't want to go too fast.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. But then again, that's the one part of the solution. The second part is when the customer does have smart meters for their energy, etc., and also has the opportunity to connect, for example, their solar panels and things to the system. If we have that, then maybe the implementation takes a little bit longer, not too long. It's still just connecting, making sure that the right connections are there, and then the system will automatically, let the data flow into the database, and then we can have our overviews and our recommendations, and that's a way in which the largest part of the customers are working with us, because we see in certain regions that smart meters, especially energy meters, are a common good now. When you look at where I'm based in the Netherlands, most companies and buildings have smart meters right now. Mm-hmm. So extracting that information is a lot easier. And in that way, you also have the full force of the system, because then you basically automatically have a real-time view constantly of what your gains and your losses are in your energy consumption. And that's really powerful. And like you said, having a control of what you think your building does and what your building really does. And we have very good examples of that. Actually, we had a large hotel agency worldwide that had a very environmental friendly building built a couple of years, I think 2 years ago. And when they started operating that building, their energy bills did not reflect that energy certification that they had for that building. Okay. And when we implemented our software there, we started noticing as well with them that some parts of the building were using a lot of energy. And basically what the result was, that of course we took some research to find out where exactly those points were. And basically what it was that the building environment, the building management system was not correctly tuned for the size of the building. So it was constantly overperforming and making crazy decisions for the size of that building. And knowing exactly with the data what and where that happened made sure that they could tweak the building management system correctly. And now they have a constantly working, let's say, building that corresponds with their energy certification.
I have a really interesting example from yesterday, because in Holland it was very, very windy.
Yes.
And, on one of the skyscrapers in Amsterdam, the fan on the roof was being moved manually because of the wind, not because it was on, but because the wind was pushing it around, and it was turning on the BMS system and changing the heating and the cooling. And everybody was like, why is this, it's off, but we're starting to get, different behavior. So it leads me to kind of two questions for you. On one side, a lot of building owners and portfolio owners, they want kind of a switch, right? Like, I can just, one size fits all of my buildings should be smart, job done. And so one question is, how standard can we do it now? Or is it still, custom every time, where we have to think about the context of the building, that there's some manual things? And then what we also say with smart building certification is that it's not about the data, it's about what you do with it. And there's always this human interaction of change, that it's required. Do you agree with that, or can this be self-sustaining? So is it easy to unify across the board, and do we need people anymore, or can buildings do it themselves?
We have the philosophy that standard software and a standard way of working is the best way going forward. Why? It's cheapest, it's easiest to maintain, and even if a lot of companies think they're different, they're basically not, usually. And of course, there are differences, but and there are outliers in a lot. If you just search hard enough, you will always find the one that needs a lot of customization. But we think that we, with a standard solution, can always help the customer best. But that standard needs to reflect a lot of different types of buildings and a lot of different types of working with a building like that. And we think that we have a way of doing that based on how we created our solutions. Is that perfect? Probably not. Usually there is always we had it, I think, at the beginning of last year, a type of company that worked with a lot of highly classified buildings, and which was just not matching with how we were doing our business. And then then we have a case in which we cannot find each other. But usually I think that's standardization and making sure that we talk on a standard way with buildings, solutions, sensors, protocols, etc. That can make the nice combinations for every single person or every single building. Can buildings do it themselves? Maybe in 10, 20 years.
Okay.
Currently not, no. There's always a people aspect to interpreting the data and making sure that the correct decisions are being made. And we think that we can help with interpreting the data, making sure that you have as easy to understand dashboards and reports as possible to make your decisions. But at the end, it's still a person making the decision.
Yeah.
And I think that technology, sensors, protocols, AI, etc., will get to a point where if you let it run, it probably will make the right decisions. Will it be perfect? No. If I ask ChatGPT to create a business plan for Spacewell, something will roll out. Is that perfect? Absolutely not. But I think that we will get to a point where the system can make a lot of decisions for you. Are we there? No, not yet. I still think that there's room, and there will probably always be room for a human decision. Yes.
And I just think that's a really important piece of the education and the communication we're doing now. Because I think if you look at, 3, 4, 5 years ago when smart was really kicking off and starting, people thought, oh, it's just a flick of a switch and I'm done and leave my building. And I think it's good that the market is calming down a little bit and realizing that technology is an incredible tool, but there's 1,000 different ways you can use it and different ways you can, optimize from it.
No, I agree. And I think that if you have a lot of different technology, like I said, but they work on a standard way in the backend, you can combine those tools for your specific case, but you're still not diverging from standard.
Yeah.
And selecting the correct sensors, software, etc., can still be in the eyes of the customer custom, but at the back end it's still just standard. And that's making it fit for every single case, or at the most cases possible, I think is very powerful.
Yeah. So let's move on to building environment. Thinking about the health and well-being of a space. How does the Spacewell solution help that?
Yeah.
And in your opinion, what should companies be doing to make a healthy environment?
Yeah. Well, I think that this part of a solution is mostly overlooked by companies. When you see, for example, a utilization or occupancy related case, then that case can always be referred back to, for example, I want to optimize my rental contracts. For example, that's a very clearly a monetary solution to a problem that they have. But when they look at environment of their employees, where they work in, how they optimally can work in a specific environment more productively, then that's mostly overlooked, in my opinion. And that's something that a lot of companies need more. It's a little bit more intangible. Having a person that at the end of the day goes home with a headache is not necessarily something a company would say, oh, that's a huge problem. No, that happens. Everybody gets headaches. But if it's structural in your building or in your rooms or in your working environment, then it can become a problem, and it even can become a large monetary problem as well. Mm-hmm. And giving the companies and our customers the insights on that related level, the environment itself within the buildings, is very powerful. And when they see that working in real time, then they say, I don't know why I didn't do that in the past. And it's actually very simple. It's mostly even simpler than the occupancy and the utilization, because you want a nice and easy overview of basically we do it on a floor plan, a couple of sensors for specific usages, for example, humidity, CO2, temperature, airflow, volatile particles, even radioactive particles in some cases. For example, radon. Sensors that measure that can push that very easily and very quickly to the platform. And you basically have a floor plan with different colors and different filters showing you in real time what's happening. And also, if you want to, in a time lapse as well, so you can basically look back over the last week, for example, and very clearly see the differences within the rooms and in their spaces regarding temperature and all those other ways in which we measure it, and make sometimes very easy decisions, making a workplace a better environment to work in. Basically, if customers see it, they have to see it working, then they very easily think, that's something that's so easy, but we didn't think about in the past.
Well, and one of the things I love about smart buildings and working in this space is that there's new value cases being born every day, right? Because the moment you have that data, you can make decisions and you can say, hey, I've been getting complaints from these people and I see that they're sitting in that area and there's a really high level of CO2 and there's a leak in the facade that's bringing in cold energy. Oh my God, and you can go and make a change. And I think that that's the part that is very often overlooked, is that it's not just once you put in the smart building, the problem is solved.
No.
No, that's actually when the work begins. That's when you
Yes.
start to see what can be changed. But having that
Absolutely.
insight and that data is better than not, because if you don't, you're just blind, you know.
Yeah, I agree
So
completely.
when you put in, so if you have a customer who says, I want to make my environment healthier, what are the things that you all say, okay, these are the things you should be measuring?
Well, yeah, it depends a little bit on the customer, but most cases involve at least CO2 and temperature, because then we can make in our dashboards, we can make the most use of our dashboards. And luckily, even if companies haven't really thought about it in the past, when you ask them or they have a case, it usually involves CO2 and temperature.
Yeah.
However, we see that more and more cases popped up at the start of COVID. So also volatile particles, things like that, are use cases that were being put up to us during that time.
Yeah.
And we started looking for sensor developers or sensor hardware suppliers that had sensors in those specific areas.
Yeah.
And we found those a couple of years ago, and we've basically been tweaking our software to make sure that we get the most out of those specific use cases and sensors. And I think that we are currently on a point where we have a very nice offer we can make to a customer when they have a certain case. It's not super broad, but it's very valuable information once you actually use it.
And what about, one of the things that we see is, I think it's the number two complaints in offices is sound, right? So like
Yes.
number one is temperature, number two is sound. And we're starting to see the emergence of sound technology, soundscaping, but also measuring sound, and of course, giving people autonomy in their decision of where they sit based on these types of things. What are you
Yes.
seeing in the area of sound technology?
Yeah, that's a good one. We didn't really have something with sound technology in our portfolio. And something happened that was actually very funny, because normally we think that we have a very good view of the market. And sound technology wasn't really on our radar, and is currently not really represented in our software. But we are, of course, have an open mind, so we want to see what the future holds and where cases take us. And when we moved to a new office in the Netherlands last year in the summer, creating that new office space suddenly made us really think about the soundscape a lot.
Yeah.
And we thought, we don't really have anything in our software that represents that sound decision. So it's on our minds.
Yeah.
And we are experimenting with some stuff in the backend, but it's currently not in our final product yet.
Well, and I think there's tricky technology there. I don't think it's completely worked out either, but you are starting to see some really interesting tech, like on the outdoor sound environment, like hanging up these outdoor sound sensors by construction sites where you can, use it to have discussions with the area to make, we're not that loud. Look,
Yeah, for example.
and there's they have one where they're starting to hang it in forests. And so they're starting to capture illegal logging,
Sure.
where all of a sudden they hear some sawing happen that shouldn't be happening in that forest, and then they send people. So it's really exciting how things are emerging.
Absolutely. And I also had a case, I read about it, in which certain frequencies can be harmful to the human ear.
Exactly.
And hanging certain sensors in a specific work environment, not necessarily an office environment, but also production, maintenance, etc. And triggering when certain vibrations or frequencies were being hit, making sure that people knew they were in a harmful environment to their ears. That's also very interesting cases are opening up. And we are monitoring the trends.
It's coming. It's just at
Yes.
what capacity, and I know that sound technology is quite expensive still. So it's just like everything else. It takes time, but it's definitely something to keep your finger on and figure out.
Absolutely.
Cool. So our next module talks about safety and security, both
Yes.
physical, how do you keep people safe physically, but also digital. How do you guys keep your technology safe? How do you make sure that hacks aren't happening, attacks, these types of things?
Yeah.
So, yeah, how is Spacewell working in those two spheres?
Yes, well, of course, for a software company, security is one of the most important things. If we didn't have that, then we probably wouldn't have a customer left, because the customer expects from you that you have it under control. And we think that it starts with a very solid hosting provider. Where do we host our data, first of all, before we look at anything else? And we have a couple of hosting providers that we work with, but the largest one is Google Cloud Services.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, if you work with the big three, like say Microsoft, Amazon, or Google, then you can be sure of your security because they have very rigorous certifications on their hosting environments, locations where they have their server parks, etc. So we chose, for a number of reasons, Google Cloud Services, and we've been working with them for the last couple of years, I think 4 years now, and we are very happy with their scalability, speed, and also their security. It's not only that, it's also making sure, for example, that in specific regions in the world, you adhere to local regulations. So our largest group of customers is in the European Union, so making sure that the data that we host is in the European economic space is also very important for us. We work a lot with government agencies and also with militaries, and making sure that we can adhere to that specific request is extremely important. And then, of course, you have your software itself and making sure that we are certified for software security. And we have a number of certifications for our software currently and being audited every single year to making sure that our software remains up to date and also secure is one of the most important things for us. We have a security department within our company, making sure that our certifications are always up to date, that audits are being done regularly and on time, and of course making sure that we have monitoring software in place and also protocols in place when things would go wrong, that we can respond correctly, of course. And luckily, we have not lost with workplace, for example, customer data in the past or something like that. Luckily, we didn't have a large breach happen to us. But of course, you can be sure. So also making sure you have the correct protocols in place when it would happen in the future is very important. So we have that extensively documented, of course, and also certified if you can certify it, and making sure that in the entire space from hosting to implementation to just using the software, that the customer can be assured that we have it under control.
Yeah, amazing. And I think, what we also talk about often is that in smart buildings, not all data is created equal, right?
No.
Like a CO2 level, it doesn't really matter.
No.
An individual's movement throughout their day, that matters.
Yes.
So I think that's a really important piece to touch on, is that they're not created equal.
No, and when you look at that, we also make sure that, and that's of course a question that we get often. Let's say, for example, occupancy in a building. You have a sensor there. Am I being watched like Big Brother, for example? No, first of all, that's not the case. We have our GDPR to adhere to in the European Union, of course.
In the European Union.
Yes.
Might be different in the US.
Yes. Yes, in the US, they watch you constantly. It's like Patriot Act, crazy stuff. No, but even when you go to the US and sell it based on we adhere to the GDPR in Europe, then they are absolutely happy with you that you do that, of course, most of the time. But For example, that sensor that is checking how many people are in a meeting room, for example, that sensor, of course, has a camera in there, making sure that they can check. It's not all infrared. Sometimes it's also only infrared. But that sensor doesn't record faces, for example. It's only outlines of people, making sure that we do have the correct information to fill our database, but not the information that is privately sensitive. And we also select our hardware vendors based on that. So if one part in the chain is not adhering to the GDPR privacy regulation, then of course that's a very large vulnerability. So we want to make sure that in every single step, not only the software, but also the hardware, we can be sure that security and data is being stored correctly.
Nice. Our last module is user behavior and collaboration. How do people find each other? How do people interact with the building? How do people, make sure that they have the control in their, in their way of working? Yeah. I know we're hitting the hour now, which this has been amazing. We've gone through everything so well, but maybe hit on that. Maybe just hit on the user experience and how the Spacewell technology supports that. And maybe also just a little bit about your service model, how you guys help a customer, and maybe some final advice you might have for the audience.
Sure. User behavior and also making sure that an end user can use a smart building is of large interest to us. We see a lot of cases where a large number of users are occupying one or multiple buildings. And in the past, that's usually done through your PC or your laptop and things like that. But luckily, we have one of these things currently. And, well, you even saw the infrared sensor there. But everybody has a smartphone. And providing useful and easy-to-use applications to use your building is very important for us. We have our workplace app. And in that workplace app, I can, for example, when I go to the office, book a workplace, a room, see the occupancy on a floor plan, where are people sitting currently, and even if and of course this is a paradox, where are people currently, that's anonymous, but if people have opted out of that personally, then we can also show where certain people are sitting. So if I have switched off my anonymized location, then I can personally be found by my colleagues, for example.
So they have to opt in,
Yeah, you have to opt into that function, and you're automatically opted out of that because of private regulation, of course. In that app, it's basically your personal assistant to your smart building. It's booking a room, it's seeing what the occupancy is, it's creating a ticket if something's wrong, for example, and making that easy to access and easy to understand, so that an end user basically doesn't even need a training, but if they're proficient with a smartphone and an app, then they can use it. That's our goal, and I think that we succeeded in that very well.
Yeah, so you guys have your own app that integrates with those other aspects.
Yes, it's basically a extraction of the analytic data. Of course, you also want to see your floor plan. You want to see where people are sitting, if certain rooms are occupied, if certain floors are more busy than other floors, for example. And also have the solution tell you, well, it's very busy at the second floor. Can I offer you the third floor, perhaps? And making your decisions based on that, but also having a very easy interface for your smartphone and booking a workplace when you're still at home. For example, I book my workplaces every morning when I wake up. We have to book them. It's a mandatory for our company. So I book my workplace when I wake up very easily. It's like 30 seconds, and I've booked my workplace, and I go to the office.
Wow!
Yeah.
Nice. So let's conclude with, this has been amazing. I've really completely enjoyed this. I think learning about Spacewell, you guys have an incredible company. What can a customer expect, and how do they get started with you guys? How would a partner say, hey, I've got something I think I can add? how should they go about it?
Well, of course, they can find us on all the socials and, of course, our website, spacewell.com. There they can get into contact with us. You can always contact me as well. Of course, that's not a problem. Basically, if a customer has a use case with specific problems in energy management, occupancy, utilization, facility management, maintenance, doesn't matter, then they can contact us and we can help them absolutely. If you're a partner, we have an entire indirect channel that works specifically with partners and making sure that a partner can be successful in their region and with their specific customers. So we also have you covered on that one as well. They can absolutely expect people with knowledge about the subject, high-end technology made easy. And in the end, we provide that data for you to make buildings work for people, which is our current slogan, but also no-nonsense data, which will be our next slogan, continuous impact. That will be our key phrase in the future in a couple of months, making that continuous impact on energy, workplace, maintenance, facility management. That's our main goal and what a customer can expect when they contact us.
Thank you so much, Boy. This has been really terrific, and I look
Thank you for having me.
Next session. I look forward to continuing our work together and learning from Spacewell and collaborating on all of the amazing and exciting things that still need to be done. So,
looking forward to working with you as well in the future, and thank you very, very much for having me. I had a great time.
All right. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.